All right, here we go. The hidden cost of speed. Let's do this bad boy. Is it just me, or is Stack Overflow just a place in which has managed to accomplish what some would call the impossible, which is the ability to actually be worse than Medium? Like, is that possible? They let anybody write on Medium. I mean, the most impressive part was that Vi came out after Vim in their ordering. And Vim literally has the word Vi in it. Why do I have such a strong feeling about Stack Overflow? Because they've been wrong consistently. It's wild. At least their articles. Their survey's fine. All right, let's do this. It's tempting to push projects out the door to woo and impress colleagues and supervisors, but the stark truth is that even the smallest projects should have a proper review periods. Really? Okay, I disagree with this already off the rip. Let's hear why. This could be a good one. There is nothing quite like the rush of starting a new job and whipping out projects, particularly at an organization where technology is not generally prioritized. Management falls head over heels for your ability to stand up and deploy marketing requests, and as you crank out project after project, it seems like you're going straight to the top. Then, one fateful day, an urgent request comes in. We have a real opportunity to capture some immediate sales, but we don't have an avenue for tagging and remarketing to these leads. What can you stand up before the week's end in time for the conference? Surely you can get something set up. They stare back at you on a Teams call. That's crazy. Already off the rip, dude. Being on a Teams call, that's crazy. Call while you archetype an API service to accommodate the traffic. With your coworkers depending on you and your hubris swollen from recent victories. You make a choice. To meet the deadline, you turn to another language or framework to stand this up because you are a go-getter and a wizard. As you quickly deploy the dirty code base and as your accolades are sung from on high, you think, I'll lace this up with our core later. They'll need it now. And and I did it. You have reached peak developer nirvana. None dare question your skill. Besides for making the protagonist in this story an asshole, I don't think there's anything wrong with if you need to just stand up something. Like, I've done this before. When I had my own startup, I had to stand up something really quickly for something, and I just made it happen. And we built it really, really quickly. I stayed up all night and programmed something out just so I could have for my business something that worked. And I was using PHP at the time, correct. Bisco hates this guy. Bisco just hates this guy. I think... So this right here, I don't think is a problem. Everything they described thus far, besides for being super negative light on the protagonist, I think there's no problem with this. Sometimes you just have to build something that's just like a little weird because you want to show people that it can be done. Yeah. Now this is where I'm curious where it goes, Bisco, which is the character he's talking about. I can see where this is going. Does something fast, gets all the credit, then leaves the shit code for everyone else later. Now that's the real question. Months later, marketing and management requests have continued nonstop, and of course, you've had no time to lace everything up. You think back to that fateful decision to implement a quick fix, not anticipating that the organization would utilize it on a daily basis, requiring constant updates for every unique sales avenue. In your haste, you built a system that is functionally not operable within the rest of the ecosystem, and you are now subject to that decision. As a request takes longer and longer to work, questions start to rise. Is our developer losing his touch? Why is this taking so long when it used to take minutes? Instead of articulating the issues or communicating the challenges, you keep applying patches and quick fixes. Months later, marketing and management requests have continued nonstop, and of course, you've had no time to lace everything up. You think back to that fateful decision to implement a quick fix, not anticipating the organization would utilize it on a daily basis, requiring constant updates for every unique sales avenue. In your haste, you've built a system that is functionally not operable within the rest of the ecosystem, and you are now subject to that decision. As the request takes longer and longer to work, the questions start to arise. Is our developer losing his touch? Why is it taking so long when it used to take minutes? Instead of articulating the issue or communicating the challenges, you keep applying patches and quick fixes. As the choices you've made in your haste pile up into a series of compounding issues, your turnaround time's slow, but the request for new projects don't. I bet you how many people right now are saying, I hate this and I see myself in this picture. Second off, something that I think is ridiculous about this article, and maybe I can help you guys with this one, is that this first thing is just something that happens in business, right? Not a big deal. This next thing right here is kind of outrageous in the sense that this initial problem really and truly has nothing to do with this problem that's developing right here. This problem that's developing right here is because of your inability to speak up for yourself, your inability to have a backbone, your misplaced value system in which made praise your highest or your North Star. Praise is not the North Star. Praise is good. Praise can make you feel better at your job and happier. And if you know people value your work, that's a great thing. But it's not the end all be all. I'm not going to call this incompetence. It's a couple things. It could be a couple things. One, I mean, incompetence could be potentially the right term, but maybe ignorance is a better term, which is ignorance in the sense that you don't know how, or you don't know that you have the ability to be able to say no to requests and or the ability to push back and say why things aren't possible. And when things don't work out, you can explain why things are slowing down. Like, some people actually don't think they have the power to do this. So it's not as much as incompetence as it potentially is not having the confidence or the knowledge that you can do that. This is a very real story, and one that I've been, party to many times. It is so enticing to push projects out the door and woo and impress your colleagues and supervisors. But the stark truth is that even the smallest project should have a proper review periods and attention. These daily choices of cutting corners and improperly aligning architectures without real understanding of the organization's business goals can create a bad situation with small teams. This is particularly true in companies where the focus is not technology and where developer resources are spread across requests from sales, marketing, and engineering. It's a tricky place to be as a seasoned professional, much less a developer early in your career. Do you push the envelope or do you push back? So something I would actually like to kind of throw back at this, which is, have you ever worked at a place where everything needs to be aligned? Where everything has to try to go through some sort of centralized authority, where architecture is constantly enforced at every last place? Is that not also a really bad experience? Does that not also cause just grinding halts on so many projects? It's a hell of a nightmare. Yeah. There's a balance. So this idea that every last project needs this proper review and all this kind of stuff, it's just like, maybe you need to gauge the importance of the project. Maybe if a project requires more than one patch, you have a predefined, like, hey, if it reaches this amount of support, we have to integrate it properly. We have to put these things. So, like, either you're willing to let a crappy project be a crappy project for the sake of being fast, or you have to let it have proper engineering, right? Like, there just doesn't seem to be any sort of middle ground to this. It's just like, it's either one or the other, and there is absolutely no middle ground here. Compounding the issue in a low-code oriented environment is a fundamental lack of experience. In organizations where a developer functions as a database admin, internal IT, and the catch-all for anything techie, their words, not mine. The individual who fill these roles typically have not yet specialized and often don't have team-based experience. They simply operate and hope for the best. Then there is no this whole prior sentence just got destroyed. What? How do you destroy your entire premise in this one thing by doing this? If they don't even have a team to orient themselves or a proper review system or other developers, then they can't even have... The proper review was them building it to begin with. Also, low code sucks. This conundrum certainly goes beyond software. All right, here we go, Flip. We're going to part 2. Flip's my editor, by the way. I'm always yelling at him. He literally removes nothing. I'm like, Flip, don't put that in there. He puts it in there, and then sometimes like puts like lol and zooms in on my face. And then when I tell him to go, bruh, he does not do it. I've requested it every single video, refuses to do it. Bruh. I hate it. I actually hate him. I actually want to fist fight him all the time.
The fight clock is brought to you by
W editor. Dude, I have a very antagonistic relationship with my editor. This conundrum certainly goes beyond software development and applies to many aspects of work performance. Going faster is not always better. Those immediate gains may not be worth it. Greenfield projects starting from scratch where no code has been written or committed, are particularly fraught with the potential tech debt. Piece of advice: all code is tech debt. Some companies make their money off of the software they write, so therefore, the tech debt is not a liability, it is the product. As our favorite uncle explains, it must be Bob. We must be talking about Uncle Bob. Software teams start out fast, but they make a mess. They want to go fast, And as they make a mess, the team gets slower and slower until they bottom out below 1% of their original productivity. It also, I mean, I like Uncle Bob, by the way. We've also had him on. But one thing I don't like about this in general, this type of stuff, is that all Greenfield moves fast because Greenfield has no dependencies. It's always fast. It will always be fast. I'll have Uncle Bob on again, and how about this one? I'll get Uncle Bob back on, and he will go through his new book coming up about the world of computing. He did a whole history book on computing called We Programmers. Faladin. Nice name. And so I think that'd be really fun to do like a whole world of just like, let's just talk about cool historical stories for an hour. I think that would be cool. That sounds like a great top show episode. Exactly. That's what we do. I could do that. Like a little Pocket Prime. Shut up. Shut up. All right. Sorry, Flip. Again. Without any defined goals, objectives, and long-term insights into what the business goals are, these small decisions can and will bite you in the pants. Yeah, by the very definition. You don't have a goal. You don't have any insight into how long these things are running. By that very definition, it will be difficult if it goes forward and it scales in a way that's unpredictable. In our cautionary tale, let's say years pass and now development team is basically unable to get anything done at any reasonable pace. The company as a whole has lost patience and needs to get development back up and working. So they bring in more developers to solve the problems. With no other cohesive thoughts or plans, they just throw more staff into the mix, and new devs have to figure out what all this nightmare is. This hydra of flying code spaghetti monsters now has more people to work on it, but the same fundamental issues remain. Part of this is inevitable with any size project. Any long enough project, any large enough project, this will always happen with. It's the unavoidable. Doubling your engineers do not mean doubling your output, ever. And second off, again, I'm just so, every time I read Stack Overflow, I just get so upset at them because they have nothing about the problems that could have been done by simply having developers who speak up or push back. Not sacrificing speed or the willingness to be scrappy, but the willingness to stand up, right? It feels very frustrating that they just don't do that. The software development engine within a company is like the power grid. It's a given that it works, and there are no celebrations or accolades for keeping the lights on. When it fails or goes down, however, everyone's upset, and what's left is assigning blame and determining culpability. Can anyone think of any industry where this is not true? Sales. Sales is probably the most like this. Marketing, leads. If your lead generation is going down, heads are rolling. If you aren't making sales, heads are rolling. Politics. Okay, that's actually probably the most fair one. Right? Politics is probably the only one in which failing and the inability to be anything is the only, like, that's the only one in which failure somehow makes you rise up. Right? Research is assumed not to work. Big celebrations if it does. Yeah, that's fair. Research probably falls into it as well. Yeah. Management's hard. Management's a hard one because its measurement is really goofy. Right? Its measurement is so goofy. How do you measure management being a success or a failure? There's no working well for a developer in an ecosystem without insight and intuition as to how difficult the workload is for various projects or positions. The black and white reality is simply working or not working. What the hell's going on? Do we need to fire them? Why is everything so slow lately? I guess you could go with the gamer approach. The gamer approach is that you blame the audience. Like what other option is there? You know why this game wasn't successful? It's the audience. That's the problem. You know why my software isn't working? It's the customers. Customers are just dicks. All of them. That started in movies? Concord? Yeah, I know Concord. That was a subtle Concord reference. I could not believe that they actually blamed the fans for why Concord. Just like, dog, that's crazy. That's crazy. That is crazy. Those tweets are crazy. This can be incredibly frustrating for developers. In my own experience, the person in the worst position is the developer brought in to clean up another developer's mess. I'd agree with that. Generally speaking, You have to learn what all the other developer did, and then you have to create your own mess, in which will probably be messy. And the reality is anything that's long-running mess is likely a failure of overall software understanding. You don't have a proper VP of engineering. I would say that that's true. I'm actually pretty confident in that. Oh, you could say CTO too if the company's small enough. But if there's like 10 different verticals within a company, you have a CTO that has a bunch of VPs underneath them for various sects of engineering, then yeah, you could say it's on the VP or director level engineering. Because if they let something go and just keeps on going over and over again, it's really an upper management problem. It's now your responsibility not only to convince management that they will need to slow down to give you time to fix things, which will stall sales, but also to architect everything, orchestrate the rollouts, and coordinate with safe goals and marketing. Or sales goals and marketing. And let's not forget actually producing the code to resolve the underlying issues. It can, at times, be an insurmountable problem. A developer in that situation has to wear a lot of hats, and they need to be an advocate to management and, by extension, the C-suite, a project manager, a marketer to understand the features and desired functionality both now and down the road to make selling the product more simple with defined pipelines and marketable features. A decision maker willing to make tough calls with regards to future compatibility of the services, how they interact, and what third-party tools they might need to integrate with to ensure the rectified code will be usable for the foreseeable future. Last but not least, they'll need to be good developers to fix the mess. If you employ a developer who can manage all those responsibilities as well as their day job, I guarantee you aren't paying them enough, or they already know and are looking somewhere else. This is just such a strange, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around where are they placing the blame? What are they saying is the exact problem? Are they saying that the problem is no planning and constant spam building is the problem? Which I guess, can anybody not agree with that statement? Is it kind of like doing this like structural or the systemic blaming of no accountability building? What can developers do to combat decisions that prioritize speed over stability and growth? The solution is not glamorous, showy, or exciting, and goes against what most sales-centric orgs, those that prioritize quick sales and immediate revenue over long-term stability and growth, typically want in a developer. 1. Take your time. You must think through things. Put the metaphorical pen to paper and work through any potential issues. While there may be quick and easy highs for delivering new products or features quickly, long-term speed and maneuverability without a reconciliation to functionality and future development efforts isn't sustainable. Unless you are a developer who churns through orgs every 6 to 9 months, you won't be building a career anywhere without thorough research and planning. I guess I just plainly disagree with this. Imagine this. You want to roll out an A/B test. You want to test, does this thing work? Do people want to use this? Any list of solutions equals AI article. You might be right. Which, by the way, if you're using AI to write articles, you're kind of crappy. And these sentences say a lot of words, and so maybe this might be what's happening. I have to say, as much as meta touts move fast, they are so bogged down in process and reviews. Yeah. The reason why I disagree with this is that it's like the inverse problem of no planning. It's the we can plan all things. We know all things, we can plan all things. Sometimes you don't even know if people will like the feature you're developing. Sometimes it's better to take the short, quick learn before you make something that's going to be extensible and great. And you know what the worst part is? People that believe they can make extensible software often make horrible abstraction messes that are hyper brittle, because you have an abstraction on an abstraction that builds a bunch of preconceived notions all into one. And as you break one part, you break so much else. Overuse of OOP as well. Yeah. JS ecosystem, let's go. All right, here. I'm going to wait for ads. I'll wait for ads because people suck at design. I don't think people suck at design. I think it's fundamentally difficult to design well. I would say that I feel significantly better than the average person at doing shotgun design, sitting down with the problem and being able to architect it all out in my head. I think I'm very good at that. And even then, I find that very difficult. What game were you playing yesterday? Oh, the Space Marine game. Warhammer 40K, Space Marines 2. Last time I attempted something like that, I was wise enough to include a version string. Good plan. Isn't this just a result of lack of management of technical debt? There is obvious times to go fast and incur technical debt. But of course, you have to pay that debt at some point, or it will pile up on you and flatten you. Yeah. Yes. This is the cost of technical debt. Hey, Colton, thank you, baby. I think it depends on how mature the product and company is. Really, really young, move fast is kind of needed. Yeah, you have to, it's not kind of, it is a requirement. You have to understand what you're building and how to make it exactly for your customer. And your customer base is probably much smaller. But I think where my company's at, we need to stop rushing so much soon because things are starting to tank. Yeah, there's a point where you have to, where you get to what you're mentioning, looking at A/B tests, etc., where it is again better to go faster and find out first. Then yes, I know what you're trying to say. Sorry, my reading skills have gone down. I'm tired, and so therefore my reading skills have gone down. But I do agree. Generally, that's what that will happen. You have a dance with the devil in the pale moonlight. Depends on the devil we're talking about, buddy. Depends on the devil we're talking about. I think we should have rushed more. We only got our first customers after 4 years. Something that I have personally found that I think is a really good development style is figuring out how to automate knowing that my software is correct enough. We are at 3 past developers deep in technical debt. Yeah, that's a tough one. And so I think asserts, unit test, and end-to-end tests are really, really great. In some projects, I like just end-to-end tests. Like for my auto scaling, my end-to-end test is going to be a local server set. Right now, I'm building it right now, which is literally just like an in-memory JSON. And we just go through that. And we're just going to build the whole thing. Type systems do that. Type systems do not do that. And you would be a damn fool to believe that your type system is going to save your ass. And using languages like Rust, which enforce better practices. Nah, people clone and arc-mutex their way out of things. Rust does not enforce better practices. And if anything, I find that shortcuts are easier to take. And that you find yourself just doing funny things. Do you get paid for continuing boot.dev subscription? I do. For those that don't know, I'm partnered with an educational place where you can review all the courses for free. You can read all the material I put out there perfectly for free. But if you want the interactivity part, the keeping track of your progress, all that kind of crap, the leveling mechanism, all that kind of stuff, you have to pay for the service, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's a nice in-between. Boot.dev, yeah, boot.dev/prime. Every type in my code base is in an arc-mutex with a clone. Welcome to writing Rust. It's worth it 100%. I think it's great if you're trying to get into programming, especially into the back-end server side of things. How about dev.boot? Ooh, that's a great question. I'm doing the Go. Oh, nice. You're doing the Go. Nice. Go's fun. I like Go a lot. All right. Ads are over. Let's continue on. Do you think Zig helps you write safer code than Rust? No. No, I don't. All right. Don't accept new projects from just anyone. If possible, build your own processes for taking ownership and identifying the issues with projects that you are given. Assert yourself and create boundaries so you aren't stuck making breakneck code-based changes and Friday night deployments. This is especially important if you're the only developer at your org or one of the small team. Brian, the marketing intern, should not be sending you an urgent request for a user feedback function on the company blog without providing some serious thought and planning. Yes, ideally you should have a a product manager is what they're saying. Someone that can reason about all of your products and make sure that they're in line. I mean, in the most ideal sense, you have qualitative research, meaning people who interview customers understand and try to voice what the customers are saying. You have quantitative research, which is going to be A/B tester, the ability to put numbers behind stuff, and then you have product designers, product managers that can think through the product and what is the synthesis of both the qualitative and quantitative research. But again. That's the ideal. That does not mean it's going to happen. All right. Ask the right questions. This ideally starts during the interview process for a prospective job. If you notice any signs of a toxic development environment, there are likely some significant alignment issues within the organization. This is actually really good. Ask. This actually is a great piece of advice. Thank you. Thank you, Stack Overflow, for finally giving some kids something to think about. This is a great, great question, which is, anytime you interview, ask questions about how much they develop. How often are you working later in the evening? What do you find yourself most interested in about your job? What are some of the challenging parts about your job? Have you ever had requests that come in late? Do you ever feel, how's your deployment process? Do you feel like your deployment process is really good? How often do you have to deal with production issues? What does on-call look like, right? Go through all of those little things, because that's very important questions to know what's going to happen. Common red flags: no project planning, either in methodology or in practice. If there's no concrete recording, goal setting, and milestones, your performance will be measured in similarly haphazard measure. Fair-ish, depending on how researched it is. Describe ideal candidates using words like wizard, code ninja, or some nomenclature that reveals that they expect you to perform magic, literatively or figuratively. All right. A huge list of desired traits and disciplines: project management experiences, senior level developer experience, data scientists, and web developers, all while having exceptionally specific industry experience in whatever sector they work in. Chances are they've recently added AI experience to the description. Fastest 0 to 5K, absolutely. Compensation is not in line with the duties defined in the posting. Interesting. If you do land an interview, be sure to ask some hard questions and have stringent requirements. Speaking as a hiring manager, hearing the following questions indicate to me a candidate who is willing to speak their mind and ask questions that are pertinent to the role and how they see themselves fitting in. By the way, also, I will say that this whole article also really discounts what it's like to be a junior engineer. How many people... how much do you want to bet any of these people, any person in this chat that haven't had their first job, would be willing to ask a lot of these questions? Or are they going to be more willing just to get their first job so they have the experience, so it's easier to apply for other jobs? It's just, I just doubt that a lot of this kind of feels like this idea that it's just easy to select whatever you want. And I know that's not true. Yeah, this article is written for more experienced people. I think it is written for more experienced people, and it's definitely lacking the placing proper blame both on the developer and on management for both not asking and pushing back. Let's see. Is this position a new hire or a replacement? That's a good question. If it is a new hire, what problems are you trying to solve in this position? What kind of professional and architectural growth do you foresee in this position? What's the biggest flaw with the product and development pipeline currently? I don't really like any of those. If it's a replacement, why did the position become vacant? What made them want to leave? What would you do differently about the structure of the position, given that it's now open again? I think some of these questions may even be illegal to ask in certain places. Or not illegal to answer. I don't know if you can say why a previous person left. Yeah, and second off, if it was a negative thing, if the person said that the company culture was horrible, you think that they're going to be like, oh yeah, they said we're the worst company ever. It's crazy, right? You want to come work for them? You're going to take over their position. It's just a dumb question. These are dumb questions, right? I'm not sure this person has done any hiring. I'm not sure if this person has done any hiring, yeah. What are some goals for position in the next 6 months? Oh, that's pretty good. How is performance measured at this organization? Also good question. Can you describe the typical flow of how a project is started, iteratively worked with progress reports, and delivered? What are some weak points in the system that you would change? KPI. It should be a red flag when prospective manager, a colleague, or employee that you're meeting with says there are no problems with the given product. Another story for another day, perhaps. I try to ask a lot of my big banger questions. I try to ask those questions to the engineers when they're doing like a technical interview with me. I prepare a lot of them. I can usually blow through most technical interviews in about 30 minutes. And then people are always like, and then I'm like, hey, can I ask you questions? And I just try to go like right into questions and ask big questions. Just because I want to know what they think, because that's more interesting to me. If you are in an established role, be extraordinarily thorough with requests or when requests for new features, expansions, or questions come through to you. Start by setting expectations early on, asking qualified questions about the specifics of how success will be measured or various aspects of functionality will highlight anything that's unclear. It's the responsibility of any technical project owner to drill down and touch on all the nuances of the ideas and end products and projects to determine feasibility, ownership, and potential future gremlins. By consistently setting the expectation that future projects will undergo the same scrutiny, you'll create a solid foundation for long-term success. Providing some scaffolding for the project development and ideation sets you on the path for consistency and reliability in projects you interact with, and that will pay dividends for years to come. You know what this also can do? This is going to do something opposite of all that, which is if you fight every single point, you ask for every extensive little point, especially in like just general goal setup type stuff, you're always and constantly pushing on everything. And I've worked with these type of people. They often get fired. Because when you're always fighting everything and you're not knowing when and where to fight, it can be really, really frustrating to work with. And you develop this like aura, this just aura of shittiness. And so there's definitely like, how do you apply the right amount of friction? You don't need to dive into every single nuance that's unclear. Being a dam, not a clog. There you go. There you go. It's good to know when to say no. But if someone says, hey, we should do this, and you don't go, well, yeah, sure. Why? What's the motivation? Why are we building this? What are we doing? Right? If you're constant frustrating to everyone, you won't last long. Yeah. This is people miss this. I've met so many people, and I can think of one person so specifically that would fight every change, no matter how small it was. And I just remember never wanting to work with this person. And then when something big was going to happen, when, we need to like say refactor a very large part of the system, guess who I didn't want to work with? That person. Guess who I asked not to be a part of that team with? That person. I just said, hey, I don't want to do it if it involves this person because they are impossible to make things move forward. And his name, Albert Einstein. Exactly. Let's assume the worst. You're in this situation right now. Obviously, this isn't ideal, but pump the brakes a bit. Sit down with the powers that be and explain the complications. It may be a difficult conversation. There may even be friction. But if you're being expected to shoulder this load while planning and deploying the transaction or the transition, let alone your daily tasks, you must make stakeholders aware of the details. Plan, and most importantly, ask questions of your community as a whole. It's important to know what tools exist, how they can be reasonably applied, and what's the correct solution to your specific set of issues. It's kind of an interesting one. I don't really understand this last one. This actually feels like an AI generated one because it doesn't really make any sense. And what I mean by that is that's usually what you do. You come up with the solution. And I can tell this person must not have written code in a long time because they just said two things that are at opposition with each other. Ask questions to your community as a whole, the correct solution. No group of programmers have ever agreed on what the correct solution is, ever, at any point in time, on God's green earth. We have our own terms for it. It's called bike shedding. It's called yak shaving. We have cargo culting, yak shaving, and bike shedding, all for the fact that we don't know what we're doing, that people don't know how to agree on specific problems. They often cargo cult in things they've heard before. And then they'll argue about the dumbest parts. I can't tell you how much time I've argued about like naming a variable when there's like huge architectural issues. Ridiculous. I disagree. Oh wait, I'm proving your point. It's like right now our stuff's on fire and you're worried about reg versus resolve and reject. Naming is in fact not the hardest thing. Okay? Making the damn thing is way harder. If you do not act, as issues mount and work grinds slower and slower, people will notice. If you fail to address the underlying issues, you may just be dragging out inevitable doom. Speed is a gamble that will cost you when a new feature is requested or a seemingly small ask for a new feature brings about substantial problems. There's also this weird underlying thing that you can somehow abstract all this away. You know what I mean? Like, who here's built any software over 100,000 lines of code? Have you ever been able to just add a feature easily? Rarely. Like sometimes it happens, but most of the time, anytime you add a feature, it has like this whole chaining effect. It's extremely difficult to just add a feature to a big code base. You cannot engineer the all-knowing solution that makes all future problems easy. Someone cheered some biddies. I'll read it. Hold on. But sir, please use the bits from before to get that mama a coffee. Not gonna lie. One that hold the grid up herself. Use this for yourself. Salt my ham. Deal. All right. I know. Make change easy. This is hard. Then make easy change. Ken Beck. Yeah, I'm still not even convinced you can make change easy. Like, I don't think you can make change easy. Yes, and you just used your question. So no, I will not answer any follow-up questions. You can't just add shit. Like Kent Beck had a lot of great phrases and all that, but I will say that there's nothing you can do about it eventually. All right, the cost of speed is something I unfortunately had to learn the hard way. Through copious planning sessions, training, and briefings, we were able to dig ourselves out of a pit I mentioned at the beginning of this article, but it was strenuous and definitely not something I wish to repeat. Moving fast can be an attractive prospect, but with so many emerging technologies, frameworks, and paradigms, it's easier than ever to fall into a tech debt trap. Create a thorough plan, ask the right questions, and over-communicating are skills that I have found useful and have helped me grow both personally and professionally. I've been told many times that over-communicating is sometimes frustrating. Making mistakes can be the best tool for growth and learning, and at times a sour reminder of how much you really don't know. I feel like the problem is I feel like this article just has no idea about real software development. Is what it feels like, because tech debt looms in every project. I've never opened up a project and thought this was great. LinkedIn article. Yeah, it's like LinkedIn level articling. I'm just not loving it because no matter how much communication you do, no matter how much planning you do, you will always fall into the inevitable pit of tech debt. And when you finally make something that's nice and you actually enjoy to dev on, someone's going to say, hey, can you add one? This is a daily 2-hour Scrum propaganda, right? Fixing tech debt makes more tech debt. How much communication is over communication? There's no single answer to that one. I'll tell you that much. Never had one, boys. All right, well, hey, this was really good. I mean, I appreciate reading the article and arguing with myself, and there was at least one good piece of advice. Can we celebrate the one good piece of advice, which is these are really great. I really like this. This is really, really great. I think this is kind of a weird question. Maybe it could be good. Is this a new position or a replacement? It's kind of strange. I think you can kind of... I'm not even really sure how to do that. KPI? What is a KPI? You know, there's this magical device called Google, and I swear it will just tell you. You merely adopted the tech debt. I was born in it. I'm molded by it. Anyways, the name is the Brymogen.